Last week on Genealogy Software Showcase, we looked at over a dozen free genealogy programs, and I got particularly excited about one, FamilySearch. And today we're going to do a deep dive into FamilySearch and show you what it can do for you. Hello, my name's Ed Thompson, and I'm your host on the Genealogy Software Showcase. I appreciate your patience with our earlier audio problems. Not quite sure what was wrong there, but I'll have to do a deep dive into my audio setup. So today what we're going to do, we did just a quick view of FamilySearch last week. It was a program a couple of you recommended that I include in our free software roundup, and I had actually never heard of it before. So what I want to do today, I spent the week looking at the program, trying it out with my software, and seeing what it could show me, and I want to show you what it can do, because I think it's a great addition to my genealogy toolbox. So let's get started. So this is the screen. This is a free program. You can Google it. I didn't grab the URL, I'm sorry, but I will include it in the show notes after this presentation. And this is the screen that we looked at last time. And what I want to do is I'm going to start from the beginning. So I'm going to load up my GEDCOM file. And we did a previous episode where I talked about the GEDCOM file and how different programs are able to import a GEDCOM file and what that means. And I will do a video just on the GEDCOM file to give you more details about it. But basically, GEDCOM file, for those of you who don't know, is a file format that allows genealogy programs to share their data. So I want to share my data with this one. And to do that, I need to find my data. I'm going to go to my Dropbox, which is usually where I keep everything. And I am going to load, well, no, I don't want to load up the whole thing because that'll take long. I know somewhere here I have just my direct line ancestors. No, I don't. So where did I put that file? I'm not going to make you wait for me while I search for it. So let's go back to this file and we'll load up the GEDCOM file that I downloaded from Ancestry. Now it's asking me, it's finding errors, and what that means, we'll talk about some of the errors that it found. It's not a big deal. It's asking me here, would I like to view the line error report? I don't care too much about that this time around. We will look at it in the GEDCOM Stats screen. So I'm going to say no. And, oh, it's skipping over them. Okay. So it looks like predominantly there are certain date formats that it's not recognizing. And it actually has an option to indicate special date formats. And we can take a look at that in just a moment. So it's loaded up my GEDCOM file. Let me check that. It finds some fact types that it didn't recognize, which is to be expected, and it didn't recognize some date formats. It was looking for a date. Here's an interesting one. I have a either or date format. It didn't like that. It didn't like the actually, that's a British format, month. Is that month, day, year, or is that day, month, year? It's hard to tell on that. And so there are several different date formats that it's not recognizing and wasn't able to parse the dates. Now that may cause some false error reporting a little bit later on, but we're going to continue on with that. So we're looking at the first tab here, which is the GEDCOM Stats tab. There are multiple. Let me show you what I found. And I should have said this from the beginning. I got a little bit flustered. So FamilySearch is designed by a Scottish creator, Alexander Bissett. He's also known as Shemi Leva. as his screen handle. And the program contains a lot of different features after it parses the GEDCOM file. So there's a stat screen, which is the screen that we're on now, we'll be looking at in just a moment. There is lists that we'll look at, error fixes, surnames, locations, and adds some little bit extra oomph in the locations, facts, census records, lost cousins integration, research suggestions, Treetops, world wars, and on this day. So if I switch back, you'll see that we're on that first screen, the GEDCOM. And it has told me which GEDCOM file it has loaded, the different things that it's having issues with. And then it indicates that it loaded up 845 direct ancestors, 2 descendants, be my sons, 1,243 blood relations, 192 married to blood or direct relations, 645 people that are related by marriage, 15 that are linked through marriage, and 231 with an unknown relationship. Relationship to whom? It is basing the entire analysis on the root person. And in this case, I am the root person. Now, I want to go back here for just a second. I can find the direct line. So I want to load up the direct line and show you a couple things that are different. I should have done this before. Now we're getting so it's loading a brand new GEDCOM file, not the same one that just had. And it's finding a lot of the same types of errors. But here it says it's loaded up 703 locations and addresses. 0 of them have latitude and longitudes. 895 locations. So it's showing me a lot of location data here. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I'm going to scroll back up. And we see here that it has 13 direct ancestors, 8 descendants, 2 blood relationships, 825 married by marriage. Now, these numbers are a little bit squirrely, and they're way off what they were a moment ago. And the reason is in this file, it does not have me as the root person. It has Jesse Meador, one of my direct line ancestors. So the very first thing that I want to do with the program is set the proper root person, because everything else is going to be driven based on me as the root person. So let me do that. And to do that, I'm going to go to the next tab, which is main lists. And by default, it comes up on the individuals tab. And this is just a list of individuals. You'll see here that the top individual is Jesse Meador, or Meador. If I double click on that, it shows me all the facts that it has about Jesse from the GEDCOM file: birth, parental information, residences, death, etc. If there are any notes, who his parents were, and sources, etc. So it gives you a good view of the individual. Just happens to not be the individual we want to set as our root person. So I'm going to sort this by surname. And if I go down here to Thompson, you see me, and I'm going to set myself as the root person. And you see now the summary is that there are 815 direct ancestors. Well, there are 815 in the file, so that indicates that I have the right data. And now if we go back, well, we don't have to go back to GEDCOM Stats, but these stats here that are being displayed are based on Jesse as the main person, and the stats in the pop-up window were based on me as the root person. Everything else that we look at from this point on will be based on me as the root person. Let me check the chat real quick. Robin, did you install from Microsoft Store? I believe if you want to download the exe, you have to get it from GitHub. Check out the Facebook FTAnalyzer group. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. So GEDCOM Stats. Nothing sexy about it here. Like I said, certain things about locations. Oh, here, it did update the recalculation at the end based on me as the root person. So that's nice. All right, so let's switch on over to lists. And on the list menu, we can list out individuals, we can list out families, we can list out sources. It will also list out occupations and custom facts, and we're going to gloss very quickly over those. I do want to remind you that if you want to ask a question, go ahead and ask that question in the chat window. And please remember to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Okay, so we looked at the list of individuals before. Let me pull up one of my ancestors again. Daniel Hart Thompson. He is my... Does it tell me on this? It does not tell me on this. That's okay. But it lists out all the fact types, surname. Maybe I can enlarge it a little bit. It has the sources that are referenced with each fact type. If a fact type has multiple sources, then it ends up with multiple lines in this file. So you see here it has 2 birth lines and 2 parental lines. All of them are related to the same sources. If I come over here to the parental line, it clearly indicates that Daniel Hart Thompson is a child of I-124 and I-125, and that's Daniel Page Thompson and Susanna B. Thompson. If I click on this, it doesn't show me anything because I picked one without a source. So let me pick one here with a source, and this will give me the source information, gives me the title of the source. Now, GEDCOM files, as we know, don't handle sources well. This is just giving me the title. So the export of the source data wasn't very good in this. That has nothing to do with Family Tree Analyzer. And I have, as a note here, because that's how I document things. Let's see, will it show me the note? Can I pull up just the note? Yeah. So this record asserts that on July 1850, D.H. Thompson lived in Concord, New Hampshire, and he was 23. And it also indicates the facts list indicates that I only have one fact, this one, associated with this source. Anything else here we want to check out here? Yes. So his relationship to the root person, he is my 3rd great-grandfather. That's correct. He's a direct relation. Well, that's because I only downloaded my direct relations. What else here? Age. Yeah, it's almost like a census record in terms of the level of detail that it gives you about that record in the GEDCOM file. So that is the facts report for Daniel Thompson, which I got to by double-clicking on the individual field. Next, we're going to go to the families, and they are listed, looks like they're listed by husband ID. So let's find Daniel again. Unfortunately, it's not by last name, but I understand that based on how some of this data works out. So let's look at the family record for Daniel Hart Thompson. And again, this is all based on the GEDCOM. And what it's showing me is, it's showing me, let me expand this one. So Daniel Hart Thompson, again, was my 3rd great-grandfather. It gives me his date of birth. And then it's a fact type it didn't know, which is cause of death. unfortunately, Daniel was a suicide. Interesting that it chose those particular records to show. So what it's actually doing is showing all of the facts for all of the people in this family. So if I wanted to print out a report of all the facts of Daniel Hart Thompson's family, I could just go to the print button and do that. Okay, that's an interesting display. Almost, what I would use to generate a family group sheet, except based on the GEDCOM. All right. So that is the families list. Next we go to the sources list, and this is a list of all our sources. Let me double click, and you see it's the same type of record that we looked at before. It lets me know what the census here, since it was a census record. Interesting, it knew it was a census record as a source, and it parsed out the fields in it. I do think this particular program has excellent census support, and we'll look at that in just a moment. Checking for questions. Doesn't look like there's any questions for me, so let's go to the next list. Occupations. So what this has is it lists out all of the values for an occupation record in the GEDCOM file, and gives you a count of how many of my direct line ancestors, because I chose direct line ancestors, how many of my ancestors had that particular job. So you see here I have at least one direct ancestor who is a blacksmith, and that's Joel P. Raymond. My let's see here. He's my fourth great-grandfather on my father's side, and he lived 83 to 85 years old. That's kind of cool. Charles H. Thompson Company. Now, all of these are different records that made it into the GEDCOM for the same person, because I provided a lot of data about his occupation, because there were some interesting things that occurred there, and I'm trying to write out a story. So they're all listed as 1111111, because these, to the program, to a GEDCOM, these are different occupations, because I added, because they're not the same. I've got one ancestor who is a chauffeur for a lumber mill. He was another one for day labor, 3 farmers. I actually have more than 3 farmers. I just haven't documented the all of the occupations for all of my direct line ancestors yet. But Lysander Hayward was one farmer. He's on my mother's father's side. Thomas Hunt is on my father's side. And David Thompson is my direct line Thompson down the male line of my family tree. First town treasurer of Abington in Abington, Massachusetts. One of them introduced the shoe business to the town. I think that was Abington as well. I think it was Abington that had a very large shoe business. And just the rest of the different occupations. Now, what I love is that when I pull into a list like that, I can always drill down to get to the actual GEDCOM data. So it's not just telling me, oh, you got one person who did this. Boom, here's the record that says he did that. So, yeah, it's very handy for looking at all my GEDCOM data. Now, the value in this, what is the value of this as I'm doing my research? Well, different lists are going to have different value to different people. I am in the process of starting to pull together enough information to write some stories. And often when you look at the same data from different angles, you learn different things. Like, if I knew that one of my ancestors was a doctor, I'm looking at this list and, oh, I never documented his occupation. I need to go and do that. Now, that raises another it's not an issue of the program, it's just how the program works. You cannot update the information in this file. When you're working with data, there's always the concept of the system of record. And the system of record is your definitive source of information. And as genealogists, your system of record, your definitive source, should always be your desktop tree builder program. That's my opinion. Very strong opinion, because that is your data. It's protected. You back it up. No one can change it. It's not dependent on websites still being available. So that is my system of record. And any manipulation of that data should be done on the program that owns that data. In this case, this particular GEDCOM is owned by RootsMagic. So what I would do if I wanted to see different values in this particular screen or any of the other lists is I would go into RootsMagic, make changes. I'd have both programs open so I could see all the different changes that I would want to look at. And I make the changes, re-export the GEDCOM, and then pull it back in here. All right, so custom facts is the last field. And basically, these are things that got saved in the GEDCOM as fact types. We usually think of fact types like birth, death, etc. And some of the data, however I chose to store it, is being stored with weird tags. Advertisement, assets being sold, cause of death. Those are non-standard GEDCOM fields. Now, there is a GEDCOM field called fact, and the value of that field are these values, which is what I put in there. And so it's taking the fact GEDCOM field and showing you all of the custom things that I have in my GEDCOM file. And I can choose to ignore them. So I can work with them. And if I want to find out more, I bet if I double click on this, boom, there's the fact record that has that information. There's the information about my ancestor, etc. Okay, checking for any questions. It looks like everybody's doing good. So the next field is particularly interesting. It's errors and fixes. Now, you can filter. You see the box at the top have all these checkboxes. And I can choose to not see everything all at once. I can choose to fine-tune the what I want to see on the screen. And I'll do that in just a minute. Lewis, you're asking, where does it get the custom fact name from? So, Lewis, there's a GEDCOM record type called fact, F-A-C-T. And in that GEDCOM record type, the value would be what FamilyTreeAnalyzer is interpreting as the custom fact name. So in RootsMagic, or in whatever program I imported the data from, very possibly from Ancestry in this case, I said, here's a custom fact. It's a fact type, and I'm going to call it cause of death. And it knows, that way I can put custom data into a GEDCOM file and have it be recognized. Robin, what loose births, deaths, etc. Okay, that one's going to be fun. Just hold on just a moment and we'll get to that. So I'm going to clear all, and I'm just going to choose one. I'm going to find one type of error to display. And is it? Yeah, okay. So this, it considers an error. It's indicating that Thomas Ryder, the death record for Thomas Ryder, and it says here he was born in 1527, is more than his father was more than 90 years old. Now, that's not necessarily an error, although it is highly unlikely. but it is something worth looking at. So what I would do when I see these errors is I would go in to my system of record. In this case for me it'd be Roots Magic, and I would look up Thomas Ryder and I would verify the data to make sure it makes sense. I would look at what sources that I have to back that up, probably none in this particular case. And so it's just flagging things that don't make sense. You know, if we look at some of these categories, death before birth or burial, people that are older than 110, marriage before spouse was born? I can't see. I've got the print so large here so that it shows up good on the screen that it I can't see some of the labels, but this is okay. So this is marriage before spouse was 13, so it's suggesting that I take a closer look at that data. You get the idea. It's flagging not necessarily errors, but potential errors. And there are several things that I could do in going back into my program to clean up those errors, which I plan to do. All right, so to Robin's question, loose births, loose deaths, and all loose info. This is a feature that is unique to Family Tree Analyzer. Loose births. What it's doing here is it is taking the data. Let me see if I can find an ancestor I know something about. It's taking the data about your ancestors and other facts in the same record that it knows and saying, you know, I can, you know, you don't have a birth information, but I can at least narrow it down a little bit for you, and that might help you with your research. Now, so if we look at Edmund Jackson for an example, let me see if I double click on it, if it justifies it. So this is all the information about Edmund, and so yeah, it filled in. This is probably a loose death. So it knows, you know, my 7th great grandfather is not still alive. So at the very least, it knows he died before today because I don't have him listed as a living relative. I know the GEDCOM says he was married in 1718. It says that he had a child born 20th of February, 1721. And it's making assumptions about how old he was likely to be, or he would be at least 13, let's say, before he had a child, or he would be, we know he needed to be born before he got married, and so it says, you know what, I'm going to guess that he was born between 1621 and 1702. And the reason the 1702 is that implies that, you know, he was probably at least 16 before he was born. And so it's called a loose birth because it's extrapolating the information from other information. If you're familiar with direct evidence, indirect evidence, this is definitely indirect evidence. But the idea being is that Family Tree Analyzer is trying to help you narrow down your research by giving you a likely range, in this case of years, that the birth is likely to have fallen into. Now, be careful, because for instance, it said he was likely born between 16 something and 1702, based on the assumption that he was at least 16 when he got married. That doesn't mean he was 16 when he got married. Maybe he got married at 14. So this is the program's best guess. but it is helpful when applying some of the other research suggestions that this program and other programs may provide. Similarly, with loose deaths, it takes information. It knows about the ancestor. Now, I did see this yesterday. I thought it was kind of funny. For most of the ancestors that it knows are not living, it's just going to say he died before January 21st, 2021, today. So there's just not enough information for the program to make something more meaningful as a loose death, but it is providing something. Here we have most likely died before 1515, before 1500, before 1440. And then all loose info is just the combination of births and deaths in one chart. So to summarize, loose info is a unique feature that's unique to FamilyTreeAnalyzer. It is looking at all of the data that you have in that GEDCOM about that person and or his parents and or his children. And it is suggesting a potential date range. In this case, it looks like mostly years, that the birth is most likely to fall into, that the death is most likely to fall into. It's just a guess, but it could be helpful in making research suggestions and getting to other data. My dog has chosen to bark. Let me mute for a moment. And we're good. So Robin, hopefully that answers your question. If you have any other questions about this kind of data, feel free to ask. I'm not sure I have a whole lot more to say. Hopefully you can see what it would be valuable for. And what do you see yourself using that kind of data for? Do you see a value in these loose kind of calculations? Evidentia does something very similar. The research program that I wrote, in its age calculator, where you give it certain information and you give it two dates basically, and it will calculate a date range between those two dates that a birth or death may have occurred. Now, in that particular case, it's not extrapolating the information from data you've already put in. You're explicitly indicating what dates you want to compare. But Rob, an impressive tool for something that is free. I know, right? That's why I was so impressed by it. And it's not. I'm looking at this interface. The interface is not dated. It's a relatively modern Windows program interface. So it's not an old program. It's been updated fairly recently and fairly frequently. I looked at the release notes. So yeah, it's free. And it runs on, I should have said this earlier, this program runs on a PC and a Mac. So yay for that. All right, that's error fixes. Looking here at surnames, and I can limit here. I just want direct ancestors, or I just want blood relations, which I assume are the same thing. Or I can include people who are married to blood or direct. I can include descendants, etc. I can include people who are linked through marriage. So this is a filter that I would apply when I want to see my surnames. And I simply do a show surnames. It shows how many individuals, how many families, and how many marriages. And let's look at Braddock. I'm double clicking on Braddock. And what it is doing here, and I thought this was kind of interesting. It is actually going to the update a local temp FTAgoons.html. I don't know what it's doing. I thought that what it was doing was going to the website. I may actually stop it. Yeah, what it did yesterday is actually goes to the, there we go, Guild of One Name Studies. Okay. and it takes you in there, and I could type in. I didn't autofill. That's probably a limitation of the web page. But if I wanted to, yeah, that's what I need. My type in Braddock there and do a search, and I can see if there is a information in the Gilded One Name Studies Index. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Steve, it's a great tool. I first used it on Windows. Alexander is still actively updating the application. Not speaking for Alex, but as a cross-platform user myself, it is a challenge to keep the Mac version current with the Windows app, and there are some Windows features not in the Mac version. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Steve. One of the things that you find is that when you're trying to build a program that runs on the Mac and on the PC, there's two different ways that it can be done. One is they're two separate programs, so the developer has to do twice the work. And the other, there's some certain cases where we can have the same source code and just generate different versions, platform-specific versions of the program. And the having to develop it twice used to be the only way that you could do it. Now there are other tools developed and being developed where you can get around that, but it depends on where your area of expertise is. So I can appreciate the effort that Alex has to go through. All right, so on the surnames page, it's actually showing what, oh, that's interesting, surname. So it showed the individuals with that surname, and it showed the family groups with that surname. What I'm finding here is there's nothing here that I can't drill deeper into by double-clicking on a row. So it's not just giving me data, it's giving me access. And that's one of the really powerful features of this program. You'll see another example of it here in just a moment. But this is the surname list, or yeah, the surname tab, and you double click on it and it will take you to the Guild of One Name Studies, as well as show you everyone with that surname and all the families that include that surname. Next we have locations. And what it has done here is it has listed out all of the locations that are referenced in the GEDCOM file. It's also gone one step further. If I set it up properly, it will actually take me to that location in Google Maps. And I'll show you what setting it up properly means. So in order to use Google Maps, you need to, in this potato, you can run the Google geocoder to find the location. So what I actually did yesterday, and I didn't think it would include this, I thought I would have to rerun it. All of these different records had question marks next to them, not check marks. And what I had to do was it under tools? No. Nope. File. Yeah, I can load up files. Where was it here? All right, I'm going to, so if you go to the help, you need a Google API key. And there's a link in the help that will take you to the Google site. You need to go get one. And on the website, there is a nice guide on how to get one. So it's not a simple process. It's not a overly complex process. It's somewhere in between. But what happens is once you have a Google API key, you can simply click on Maps and run the Google geocoder to find the locations. The other thing you can do is you can run the OS geocoder to find locations. So if Apple has a tool, and you're on a Mac, it'll use the operating system's geocoder default function. If Windows has one, you can do it there. I ran that yesterday. It wasn't as it did fill in some of the locations, but it wasn't terribly complete. When I did get everything set up, let's see. It says display. What does it do there? Okay. So if I show geolocated locations, what it means by geolocation is what it did was it went out. And I can't seem to grab this. Let me, come on, grab it. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, and grab you, put you over there, put you over there, put you, oh, why won't it let me expand on the longitude and latitude? Okay, so what geolocation is it giving you the longitude and latitude of the location in as much as it can. It tells you, so the status means, hey, I matched this using Google. Hey, in this case, I didn't search it for whatever reason. In this case, I couldn't find a match. Well, killed in a raid is not a place, so must have misfaulted that. And then all these other ones are Google Match. And let's see what happens if so. South Africa. See if I double click there. There we go. It actually pulls up South Africa in Google Maps. Well, actually, in this case, it's OpenStreetMap. That's what OS is. It's not the operating system. It's OpenStreetMap. I was wrong about that. So that was an OpenStreetMap. Now, South Africa, of course, is a country. It's not a place. South Africa, Free State of Castell. If I double click on this, I have a much closer location here. Now, the other thing that I can do, so this is show the old OS map. Let me, so here's one, Blue Hill Cemetery. And if I show the old OS map, you see here that Blue Hill Cemetery is out with the UK, so it cannot be shown on a UK OS map. Okay, I'm totally misguiding you on what this old OS map thing is. I obviously have that wrong, so forgive me for that. Let's look at it on a Google map. So I have a location that's the Blue Hill Cemetery. If I say show on Google Maps, and if I've input the API key, and that's important, it will take me to Blue Hill Cemetery on Google Maps. And I have regular Google Maps. I have all the functionality that I would normally for Google Maps, which means I should be able to get the satellite view of Blue Hill Cemetery. And I can zoom in and out, etc. Now, it's not, this program isn't the only program that can do that, but okay, so David Hopper, OS generally means Ordnance Survey, UK Maps. Okay, thank you, David. So I was wrong about it being OpenStreet, and I was wrong about it being operating system specific. So this one is old Ordnance Surveys. And now, it's still, but if I double click, like Amesbury, Massachusetts, and then I double click on that, oops. Oh, that's interesting. Now what it's showing me here is all the ancestors with a connection to Amesbury, Massachusetts. So you see it's like, yeah, so this is going to help me if I've got people in the GEDCOM. This could help me with friends and neighbors, friends, associates, and neighbors. Fan research, show me everyone that's in a particular location. And then I can pull up on Google Maps where that location is, and I can compare it to other things in the local area. Like I'm looking at here, Amesbury is very close to Southampton, where I also have some relatives. So, and I also, the same thing is true, by the way, of Salisbury in this lower corner. I have a lot of, keeps increasing. Okay. I have a lot of ancestors who are in... Stop that. Stop it. Correcting it. Just do what I tell you to do, not what... anyway, I have a lot of ancestors in Salisbury, Massachusetts, which is Hampton, North New Hampshire. Used to be part of the same area, and then in the old British colonies. All right, but I digress. So hopefully you can see here that you know, the location functionality and the value that can give to you, and you can break it down by countries, regions, subregions, addresses if you have them. Like here's my this is where my grandparents lived before they passed away. So that's kind of cool. Which apparently has a medical marijuana card place next to it. Interesting. Things have changed. Okay, so and then places, which are probably a little more generic. And it's doing a best guess on how it's parsed out some of these fields. I have seen countries show up in region and subregion fields in some cases. And that has much to do with how I've not paid enough attention to full location names in my system of record than it does with limitations in this program. Okay, we're running out of time. Facts. We talked about facts. The other integration, and I tried to. There's a website called Lost Cousins, and it requires a membership, and it is a paid feature. Once I found that out, it was late yesterday, and I didn't want to get into it that much. But it does integrate directly with Lost Cousins. So if you are familiar with the Lost Cousins website, and we'll probably do a feature on that in the future, there's a whole tab dedicated to that. I wanted to talk some about Census. So there's a lot of different Census data that I can look at here. And the interesting thing is it doesn't have a complete list of census. It has a lot of stuff about UK census records. I'm obviously from the US. It has censuses that don't exist. Well, they exist, but they're not public record. Can't get to the 1950 census yet. Soon, but not yet. So let's pull up the 1930 census. So I'm going to show not found on the census. And what it is showing me here is a list of people that either it thinks should be in that census somewhere that I have not documented, or that it really can't tell. Like, for instance, I know Abigail died long before this census was taken, but the GEDCOM doesn't have that information in it. I don't have a birth date. I don't have a death date. And you see here where that loose deaths, loose births comes into place. So the ones that are highlighted in red are ancestors that are known to be alive when this census was collected. The ones that aren't highlighted are ancestors that it has no way of knowing whether that ancestor was alive. And if I double click on the known to be alive one, for example, oh, it can't search. Let me see, 1929. That looks like a bug since I clicked the 1930 census. Let me pick the 1920 census. So these are ancestors that were known to be alive at that time. And what it does is it takes me to FamilySearch. And it searches the 1920 census records for me and brings up potential matches. Like I said, there's nothing that I've double clicked on in this program that hasn't taken me to more details. which is wonderful when you're doing research. So I wanted to make sure. And there are different things. I can show ancestors that do show up in that census. If I wanted to look at that, and maybe I want to do some comparisons and see if maybe, I always wonder about, did my great-grandfathers from my mom's side and my dad's side actually live close together? That would be interesting. So, Jan, Clues is a program that helps you inventory the documents you've collected. Yes, and Jan, I actually am in talks with Richard Thomas of Clues about doing a live interview about Clues and let him demo the program for us. And he wants to do it later in the year. He thinks he has a release coming out later. But yeah, that's another program where you can track some of this information. Let me try and finish up here, hit some highlights here. Research suggestions. I didn't play around a lot with this. This shows, for instance, that James Basham, I believe that he showed up on this. This does something with lost cousins. So I didn't dig really deep into this one because there were too many red fields on this. And I knew that probably meant that I didn't have enough detailed information about my ancestors in that GEDCOM file. Treetops shows me everyone at the top of my tree. So different branches of my ancestry I get up to, and this is kind of like my oldest known ancestor, or it could also be where my brick wall is. So I can say blood relations, I can say descendants, don't care about my descendants. I can include individuals that have only one parent known. Let me exclude that and see if it changes that. Yeah, so I have, if you look down here at the bottom, I have 378 treetops, etc. World wars. So this would be ancestors that were alive or that it doesn't know if they were alive during World War I. And here's one. And maybe I do and maybe I don't have a World War I record for that ancestor. And this one has a particular UK focus, but it could still be valuable. UK focus makes sense, since as I pointed out at the very beginning, that Alex is Scottish. So I'd love to get him on here. Same thing for World War II. And then on this day. So I can pick a day where I know something about an ancestor. August 10th, let's see. I should have picked a date where I know something happened, but update list of events. And this is loading world events that took place on October 10th. It's taking a little while to load world events up here. Jan's saying I learned about FTAnalyzer via Lost Cousins. Well, Jan, I learned about Lost Cousins through FTAnalyzer. Okay, so the only event that I could find for August 10th here was the birth of my ancestor. So nothing particularly interesting. Let's pick the 4th of July, just to see if we got something more interesting here. Nothing interesting happened on the 4th of July, did it? Load it up, load it up, load it up. Lewis says I learned about Lost Cousins from you 10 minutes ago. Yeah, thank you, Lewis. Yeah, I'm not getting any world events. So might have to play with that feature, understand that feature a little bit better. There's also a reports tab here that has some reports, possible missing child report, birthday effect report. What is that? That's interesting. Oh, I'd love to know where you got this data from. Birth month of January. The birth effect is died near his birthday. 6% of the people died who were born in January died in January near their birthday. Cute. It's a little gimmicky. Yeah. Okay. So the double click shows those who died within 15 days of their birthday, and that's not necessarily birth year. That's just a birthday. Interesting. So I can tell that the developer has a little bit of fun with the program as well. Okay, so that's all I've got to demo. Looking over at the chat, it looks like there's a side discussion there on Lost Cousins. It's an interesting site, but I have some issues with how Peter Calver, who owns the site, set it up. Yeah, I have to spend a little time on there to really see what it's all about. If you have any questions, post them now. But that's it for this week's episode. Let's talk about next week's episode. Family Historian. Several of you out there right now, Jan Murphy, are big fans of Family Historian. I have included it twice on the Genealogy Software Showcase. Actually 3 times. The episode on GEDCOM imports, the episode on basic functionality, and the episode on reporting. And I can tell you that I got something wrong on every single one of those episodes. So, next week, Genealogy Software Showcase is going to feature 7 days with Family Historian 7. Each day I'm going to put together a travel log of what I did with Family Historian that day and show you some of the functionality that Family Historian can offer you in 7 days. So on the first day, I'll focus on the website and the installation, and rest of the days I'll cover something about the program, and on the last day I will feature the new features that came out with Family Historian 7. So if you're interested in Family Historian 7, or if you're interested in just knowing on how some tasks are accomplished in other genealogy programs, join us for that episode next week. And please remember to hit the subscribe button before you leave and get yourself notified. Jan, I'm going to buckle down and buy version 7 on day 1. So I'll be covering version 7. Robin, I'm going to cover all of that in 1 hour. Well, if I was doing a true travel log, I couldn't show you everything about Spain in 1 hour, in 1 day, but I could give you a slideshow on what I saw in Spain that day. So think of it more along those lines. I'll give you a taste of Family Historian, and give Jan Murphy and some of the rest of you an opportunity of making fun of what I did and didn't find, and how I did and didn't use it. So we're going to have some fun with that. It'll have a travel log format and 7 days of Family Historian 7. So I thank you for joining us today for our feature on Family Tree Analyzer. And until next week, go out and have some fun.